It's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the people from Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola. And Mr. Speaker, today is a particularly important day. No, it's not my birthday. It's not my mother's birthday. This is a day that so many of us have looked forward to. Over my right shoulder is the other Member of Parliament from Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies. And I stand before this House with tremendous pride. Those who don't know, I was a prosecutor before I was elected here. Most people have heard that far too many times, I know. But one of the things I mostly prosecute were internet offenses against kids. The term child pornography disgusted me. Children cannot consent. Pornography depicts consenting adults. It is sexual abuse. So in 2021, when I was running, I said my first order of business would be to change that law. I stood on doorsteps saying, we will change that verbiage. When I gave my first speech in this House, Mr. Speaker, I spoke about that. I spoke about a number of other things, but I called upon this House to do it. With my colleague and friend, I drafted the bill, he presented it, he sponsored the bill, and together it was navigated through the House of Commons and the Senate, and it received royal assent on October 10th, 2024, 1 year today. And that means that today the term child pornography disappears from the Canadian legal lexicon. It is called what it is, child sexual abuse and exploitation material. I am profoundly proud of that today. Before I begin, Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize Walter Benke of Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, an exceptional individual who has given so much. I appreciate all that he has done. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I thank Walter for his tremendous contributions to our democracy. Mr. Speaker, I also want to highlight Daniel Martin and Karen Martin, another two people who have contributed tremendously to the vitality of the democracy that is Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola. Daniel himself is a Navy veteran, somebody who cares deeply for the flag, deeply for his country, and deeply for others. The same goes for his wife, Karen, who I know volunteers as a lawyer. So many lawyers, people think that lawyers are just there to make money. She actually retired at a relatively young age and still gives back to young lawyers, still volunteers in any way she can. I thank them for what they've done for the people of Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, and for their tremendous contributions and assistance to me. Mr. Speaker, we are talking here about Bill C-11, and now Bill C-11, really, the crux of it is about sexual offending in the armed forces. Now, this bill, I think, has two elements of the debate that I would love to raise. The first element of the debate is the colossal failure when it comes to sexual offenses, particularly sexual offenses in the military, but that's actually just symptomatic of the tremendous failure of this Liberal government when it comes to sexual offenses, period. The other issue then is, what do we do with it? At the outset of this speech, I spoke about my experience prosecuting sexual offenses against children. Most of those involve the internet, but I also prosecuted a number of sexual offenses. And I will say this, victims who experience sexual trauma at whatever age, but particularly at a young age, live a psychological life sentence. And let's make no mistake about this. The fact that the Liberals have not legislated on this is on their hands. The Harper government legislated on sex crimes, drugs, and guns. The Liberals have repealed on guns. We saw that in C5. The Liberals have legislated on drugs. We saw that extensively. Conditional sentence orders. They have not legislated on sex crimes. So if they're so ideological, why won't they address the sex crimes? And yes, perhaps I'm getting very animated, but if there's something to get animated about, it is that we have victims each and every day who walk with companions, these demons that they do not see, but they feel, they hear. This pernicious offending, particularly against children, but it happens to adults too, and they carry that for the rest of their lives. And the Liberals have not legislated on this. You can still commit a sex offense against a child and serve it on house arrest. Robbery is the taking of property by force. Maximum sentence, life imprisonment. Sex assault is the taking of dignity by force, the taking of consent by force. The maximum sentence, 10 years. You take a child's innocence, it's 14 years. But don't worry, house arrest is still an option. So when I get up here to speak about the military and sexual offending within the military, when I get up here to speak about sex offenses generally, I am appalled at what we have done or failed to do, which is actually even worse when we know of a problem and we sit idle in Parliament. I put forward Bill C-299 last time to raise sexual offenses to life imprisonment, to put sex offenses, most sex offenses, on par with property offenses. I got heckled when I introduced that bill. And then we wonder why we are in the state we are in, where this insidious offending happens, completely underreported. And if we think it's underreported in the military, I'm sure it's just as underreported in society. Myths, stereotypes abound. Who will believe me? These are the problems, and in fact, they've been perpetuated in the military by this House's inaction. So I challenge the Liberals across the way. I'll try to look at each and every one of them in the eye who are here and question, what are we doing here? Why are we sitting here? We're talking about a really nuanced subject here when we're talking about transferring investigative authority and prosecutorial authority to civilian members or civilians in the prosecution service. And Mr. Speaker, I will say this, that is something that we have to recognize is an issue. Prosecuting sex offenses is not something that is easy. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that because it is something that I had to learn to do. Investigating sexual offenses, I think, is even harder. You know, I actually had something come across me where a police officer said, well, you didn't say no. And this was recent. You didn't say no. So for those watching at home, it's not no means no. It's only yes means yes. That's it. But those are the issues we are dealing with. And that was a member of a police force that was not a military police force. We need widespread education. But if I can underscore one thing in this speech, this House has failed when it comes to sex offenses. We should all be ashamed. When we as Conservatives face pushback because we want mandatory minimums for an offense wherein the victim is serving a psychological life sentence, and all it takes, and people will say, oh, it failed in the Harper era. You know why it failed in the Harper era? All you need is a safety valve to say except in exceptional circumstances. That's it. That's it. I implore one of my Liberal colleagues, one of my Conservative colleagues, one of my Bloc colleagues, anybody, to put forward that. There's one thing we should be prepared to do, is to send people to jail when they hurt people sexually, especially in the military. And my commitment to victims is this: anybody who touches a kid, if I'm in a position to legislate on this, I will not take my foot off the gas pedal until those offenders see the inside of a jail cell for a very long time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions or comments? Question commentaire, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, When I take a look in terms of what's been taking place over the last number of years, I believe there has been significant movement forward. It's one of the reasons why we see today sexual assaults going and being tried through the civil process as opposed to the military courts. C-11, in essence, puts it into the criminal law to ensure that there's even further clarity on the issue. This Prime Minister, understanding the impact in the Canadian forces, has ensured that we have this bill before us today. And he's only been the Prime Minister for less than 6 months. We're hoping to be able to see it get to committee so that we could actually listen to what Canadians have to say about the legislation. And I think where I agree, all members have a role to play on this, but I would also argue that all members are concerned about the victims, and the Prime Minister has demonstrated that by the commitment of having this legislation before us. Would he not agree?
Member for Kamloops Thompson Nicola.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that we are all concerned. I would never say we aren't all concerned, but I am troubled by the fact that I've been here for an hour and it's only been that member who has asked questions on behalf of the Liberals when there are many talented Liberals sitting in this House who can talk about it. So let's take his logic here to its endpoint. The Prime Minister is so concerned about sexual offences that C-11 has been put forward. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this already discussed in Parliament on a past occasion? And if the Prime Minister is going to be such a leader on this issue, then where's the legislation to punish sex offenders writ large? The Liberals have washed their hands of it. So no, with all due respect, I will accept the proposition that we as members believe that sex offences need to be dealt with appropriately. I will not believe the contention that the Prime Minister has made it a priority, because he's not made it a priority.
Question et commentaire de la députée de Laurentides-Labelle.
The honourable member for Laurentides-Labelle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an easy thing to say. I have a question that the Conservatives dared appoint a chief of the defence staff, where in his pedigree it wasn't exactly a clean slate.
To Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I know the case that my colleague is referring to. Obviously, I am not going to justify any appointment of any wrong person, period. I'm not sure who made what appointments, because I don't want to presume that we're referring to the same person. I know there have been cover-ups. I believe that there have been cover-ups, frankly, by the Liberal government. Those cover-ups are unacceptable. Those cover-ups are completely unacceptable, and those cover-ups should end. We should be appointing good people. For that, I thank my Bloc colleague for raising. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The member for Bay of Quinte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his commitment to prosecuting sexual crimes of any nature. As a former journalist of many years who covered not only court proceedings as a court and cops reporter, if you will, but I also covered CFB Trenton, Canada's largest airbase. And in that role, I had occasion to report on and cover sexual assault cases heard before a court-martial in hearing rooms at CFB Trenton. And on more than one occasion, it always struck me, Mr. Speaker, that the accused was present in the room, represented quite often by a civilian lawyer, but the complainant, in almost all cases, it was a woman in uniform, had to make her complaint in a room full of other uniformed individuals. Would my friend not agree that that setting is not the ideal setting for this kind of a complaint, and it should be in the civilian realm?
The member for Kamloops Thompson Nicola.
Well, I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting my colleague across the way, so in case we have, I apologize, but I do welcome him to this chamber. Under the criminal code, there is, I believe it's under section 486.3, something like that. There are witness accommodations that are available in the civilian system. I'm not a military expert, so I don't know if those accommodations are available, but I would support those accommodations being available. There are things like screens, testifying from a separate room by CCTV. Victims should have access to those, so I would agree. Thank you.